Hi, FashionGo members. Welcome to this financial session. In this session, I will be discussing the key numbers to analyze to take your business forward. So in the presentation, I will be discussing sales, inventory, expenses, and net income. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Darlene Mitchell, and I am the founder of Darlene Y. Mitchell. I am a retail strategist specializing in merchandising financials and inventory management. So I've been doing this part of the business for a very long time, 25 plus years. Most of it has been in corporate America, where I work for companies such as Gap, Old Navy, Chico's, and you can see the brands below. And I headed up the teams of merchandise planning, demand planning, store planning, allocation planning. And really, this is the side of the business that deals with the finance of merchandise and the store allocation strategies and also inventory management. So I really do understand this part of the business. I'm an expert in this part of the business. So what I really do is help my clients drive their sales, their profitability, their net income through inventory management. So I help them to not leave money on the table, or in this case, money on the rack. So because I worked in corporate America, I know a little bit of the inside. And you may be wondering, as we've gone through COVID, you've seen some big retailers closing down or filing bankruptcy. And you're probably thinking, I thought they were already closed. Well, no, a lot of these companies have been limping along for maybe a decade, but because they're constantly looking at their numbers and constantly reevaluating and making changes, they stay in business. And that really is the key to staying in business, knowing your numbers. And that is what I am an expert in, and that's what I help my clients with. So we'll start with sales. Sales, you need to have a sales plan. You need to know what you want to do from a financial side in your business. If not, you just end up getting whatever you get, right? And sometimes it's a good thing, but most times it leads you not to where you want to go. So starting with a sales plan, what do you want to do annually? How much volume do you want to do annually? And once you decided that, you now want to look at it from a quarter standpoint. So it's 4 quarters a year. Then you go down to the month standpoint, which are 3 months in each quarter. Now, when I think about a quarter, it's not, I'm going to take the 4 quarters and divide it by 4 and get 25% for the year for each quarter. That's not what we should be doing. If you think about it, Q1, which has January, February, and March, is very different from Q4 that has October, November, and December. They act very differently. Your customer shops differently in the quarters. So you have to know that about your quarters to set your strategy at a quarter level. Then you're going to go down to the month level within the quarter. So let's talk about Q4. Q4 starts out with October. October is typically a soft month. So you're not going to plan your 3 months the same. And then November and December are slightly different, but not a lot different. So understand what is happening with your customer each month to decide to determine your quarter sales. Next, we'll talk about seasonality, and that plays into what I was just talking about as your month's selling. So your seasonality is just that, what your months are doing. So you have peaks and you have valleys. A valley is January. January is a valley. June, July can be a little bit of a valley, really June, and then October. So what are your peak months and what are your valley months? And it could be very different for you based off of where you are in the country, so your geography. And it could also be different based off your customer. It can be different, even if you have multiple stores, it can be different within each of your stores. So you have to understand and plan that out, so to make sure you have the right inventory, that you're doing the right promotions and marketing in that area. So when you're planning, and we're talking about your annual sales, your monthly sales, and your quarter sales, you're also doing that at a store level if you have multiple stores. Or if you're a brand, you're doing that at a channel level, which are each one of your clients, your customers. So, it is up to this high level of an annual down to a granular level. Then you want to look at your classifications. Your classifications are how you're bucketing your product. So tops, dresses, sweaters. So if you look at FashionGo, you can see how their classifications are set. And it's set very nicely, because I have clients that sometimes put all tops, whether it's knit tops, athletic tops, and sweaters are all in tops. Well, there's so much happening that you can't read your business very well if you're just lumping all tops together. So look at FashionGo's classification. It's a really good guideline. And the reason why you want to know that is because, again, it helps you understand what's happening by quarter, by month. If you know your classifications, you can see truly there's seasonality that is within your classifications as well as within your months. So I'm going to show you an example of what a financial plan would look like to give you an idea. So this is a financial plan. You can see to the right that the total sales, you can see in green, everything in green is what I'm going to be speaking to. So if your total amount is $350,000 for the total year. And then if you look at the quarter, we have Q1 represents 15% of the total year, Q2 23%, Q3 30%, and Q4 32%. So you can see not every quarter is the same. Then when you look at the quarters, let's look at Q1. Q1, January represents 15% of Q1 sales, February 35%, and March 50%. Now, March is a high percent because Easter falls in March. Companies sometimes get tripped up by Easter shift because Easter can be in March or in April. So don't always look at last year to plan March and April, because it depends on where Easter falls is where you're going to get your lift in sales. And it's not just Easter, but it is also when spring break usually happens, when people start really thinking about spring. So that is why you see that lift. So make sure to know when Easter falls. So that is an example of a merchandise financial plan. So when you're looking at your sales. Next, we'll go into inventory. So for inventory, what you really need to understand is the when, the how, and the what. So when do you bring the product in? Your timing of your purchases. The how is how much you need to bring in, and the what is the classifications you need to bring in. So let's talk about the timing. You buy for your budget, not for what you have on your credit card, open on your credit card, but for your budget. You also look at what you're going to be buying immediate, and what are you going to be buying further out. So traditionally in retail, it has been 85% of your inventory has been bought 3 months out, with 15% being what we used to call chase. But now your customers are more buy now, wear now. So it's becoming more of buying maybe 50% 3 months out, and then 50% is going to be immediate. And how you'll see that in FashionGo is 50% will be your pre-orders, and then 50% will be your immediates. So that's very different from where retail has been in the past. How much to purchase really is determined by your sales that we just discussed, your budgeted sales that we just discussed, because you're always buying for the next month usually. because inventory doesn't always fall at the beginning of the month, you may get receipts in the third week of the month or the fourth week of the month, and they're really for the following month, not the month that you're in. So as you're looking at your sales plans, you're looking forward. Again, that's how big businesses stay in business, because they look forward instead of looking backwards. So your POS system looks backwards. So if you just look at your reports and your POS, you're always looking at what happened, not what's going to happen. But if you have a financial plan, that gives you that forward view, and you buy to that forward view. Then you will look at your classifications, which is the what. Just as we talked about it, just as your months have seasonality, your classifications have seasonality. So you need to understand when is the right time to bring something in and when is the right time to bring it and to exit it. And so, it's really good for seasonal products such as shorts and sweaters and outerwear. You need to understand when is the last receipt should happen. Because what'll happen is you'll see these sales are doing very well, and you're going to want to buy, receipts of sweaters, but you have to stop because the sales will drop off, and they'll drop off very quickly. So the what to bring in is very important too, especially with seasonal items. And I would say for inventory is one of your most powerful assets in your business. It is your biggest asset in your business. Your money is very much tied in to your inventory. Most companies, at least 50% of their expenses are coming from inventory. 30 to 50% are coming from inventory. So you want to be very smart about how you bring that inventory in, how much you buy, and what you're buying. Because if you buy incorrectly, tie your cash up in wrong product. So you'll see that you're having great sales, but you're not getting any cash flow. There's no money going to the bank because of the fact you're tying your monies up in something you may not need at the time, or something you bought too much in, and now you're going to drive markdowns, which brings your profitability down. Markdowns are not a bad thing. A lot of excessive markdowns are bad. So a 1% change in your inventory levels can yield you about a week difference in supply. So if you have, $10,000 worth of inventory and you change by 1 week, if you have $10,000 of inventory and you have 10 weeks of supply, or enough of inventory to do 10 weeks of sales, if you just change by 1%, you bring that weeks of supply down. Instead of at 10, it comes down to 9. So you can turn it a little bit faster, which means your cash is not as tied up. So that 1% makes a big change. It also makes a big change within your profitability as well. So just think about that. But the key is knowing what 1% you need to make adjustments in, and that comes with a plan. So let's take a look at an example of an open to buy. In this case, this is for tops category. You'll see that in the left-hand corner, and we're looking at your beginning of inventory, all your sales, your markdowns, anything that decrements your inventory to get to a end of period inventory. If I know my beginning of period inventory, I know all my reductions, I get to my end of period inventory. And if I know my next month's my next month's inventory need, I know that's my open to buy. So that is how you should be looking at your open to buy. What is your next month's need? Now, your next month's need is dependent on how you want to turn your inventory. What is your weeks on hand you'd like to have? What's your sales to stock? What is your annual turnover rate? So those are things that go into determining your monthly open to buy. Okay, so now we're looking at our expenses and our net income. Expenses is a big part of your profitability. So you really want to understand what's happening within your expense structure or your profit and loss statement. That's where you'll see your expenses. You want to look at your big three and understand what percent of your total sales do these expenses represent. The big three are usually rent, personnel, and inventory. Now, for an e-commerce business, it will be marketing may replace rent or personnel. Okay, so but those are usually your big three, and you want to really understand what percent they are to your total business. Another thing to understand about expenses is what are your variable expenses and what are your fixed. So your fixed expenses are expenses that don't change. They month over month, they stay the same. So that's rent, that may be your Shopify membership, anything that doesn't change over time. Variable expenses change over time. So they change as your sales change. For example, one key variable expense is your bank charges or your credit card charge. As your sales go up, that percent changes. As your sales go down, it goes down as well. So sales go up, your credit card charges go up, sales come down, your credit card charges come down. So when you're looking at your expenses, don't make the assumption that that expense will be the same every month. It will not. And I think a lot of people get tripped up by that about variable expenses. Another variable expenses is your shipping expense. So once we look at our sales, we see our expenses. Now we get to our net income, which is sales minus cost of goods minus expenses. And that gets you to your net profit or net income. So let's look at an example of your financial strategy with your net income. So the same sheet we looked at before at our financial strategy, but now we've layered on our cost of goods and our operating expenses, which gives us our net profit. And you can see here, let's look at the month of January. You can see here at the very bottom, we have a net profit of $5,263. And that is because our sales are low. We know that, we said before, January is a soft month. So sales are soft, but our expenses will not change that much because you still have to pay the same rent. You have to still do the same marketing. But what catches us up here is our cost of goods, because we're buying for a month that's about to pick up in the month of February and March. So that is why you may have a negative profit. But you get into positive profit as you go throughout the other months. Negative profit does not mean you don't have cash flow, because prior to January, we had a great Q4, right? So then we banked some money and we were able to pay for our January expenses. So just because we have a negative profit does not mean we have negative cash flow. So that is how you tie it all together. This is one of the ways that businesses has stayed in business and move forward, because they're looking at these numbers and making adjustments. And I would say that the good thing about being a small to medium-sized business versus the big businesses that are having struggles right now is that it is easy for you to make these tweaks and see a difference very quickly. So you have such an advantage being a smaller business and making a tweak and surviving, because you can be very nimble with your financials, and you also can be nimble with how you change or make tweaks to your business and being innovative as well. So I hope that this gives you some value and help you with your financial and inventory management in your business. And if you have any feedback or any questions, please contact me. And here are the ways to contact me. Here's my Instagram, my website, and my email, and I'd be happy to talk with you or hear your feedback.